Well, here's a lesson on rounding, with the concept of rounding and how to round. So we're going to start off with the concept of what rounding really is. So say, for instance, we have a number line here, 0 through 9, and then we can see 5 is about the midway point. Say we have the number 3 on here, and 3 would be about here on our number line. What we're trying to figure out, what's really 3 closer to? Is it closer to 0 or is it closer to 9 here? Obviously, if we draw arrows here, we have to take a shorter pathway to 0 when compared to pathway to 9 there. So we can say that 3 is actually closer to 0 here. Okay. On the other hand, we can erase this here. Let's say we have the number 7. Well, we know 7 is a little bit more than 5 here, and it would be about right here. We know that we don't have to go as far to 9 as we do to 0, so we can say 7 is closer to 9. So this is an important concept here because when we look at this number line here, we're determining whether a number is closer or farther away from each end of it. So we're going to take this number line and we're actually going to fold it. We call our rounding mountain here. So our rounding mountain is basically our number line, and we have numbers 0, 1 through 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way down to 10 on the other side, showing that we're closer to one side or the other if there's a number on here. So for example, if a number is 3 on here, we know that it's actually closer here, and that rule means we're going to stay the same, and I'm going to show you what that means when we actually have a number. So let's take this number down below, and it says round to the nearest 100. So we're going to take this number 4,415 and round to the nearest 100 on here. Well, I first have to identify my place value of the 100. So I'm going to start off with my 1s here, and I know my 1s are right here. Then I go to my 10s, and then my 100s here. What I'm going to do with that place value that I'm rounding to, I'm actually going to circle it, and then draw an arrow to my place value to the right. That's telling me now I have to look at that 1. Where is that 1 on the rounding mountain? Where is it on the place value chart? Because really what we're trying to say here, is it really closer, is our number really closer to 4,400 or 4,500 here? And that 1 that we're pointing to is very important in here. So we're going to take that 1 and look up on our rounding mountain or our number line up above. And we're seeing that 1 falls onto this left side here. And what it's basically telling us is that that 1 is telling us that the 4 has to stay the same. We are really closer to 400 on here. So we stay the same here, and what we're going to do below is draw a 4 for our number. Everything else to the right becomes a 0 because we're saying it's closer to 400. And then everything else to the left stays the same. We don't touch it there. So our answer becomes 4,400. So when we fill this into our blank, what we're saying here is 4,415 is approximately or close to 4,400. Let's try another one. We're going to go to this next slide here. We have a much larger number here, and what we're going to do is round to the nearest 1,000 on this number again. Let's see if we can practice with this. Well, I'm going to circle that 4 again because I know that that 4 is in the thousands position. Okay? And I need to draw my arrow to my other 4 right next to it to the right. And that 4 there is now that I'm pointing to is one I'm going to be looking for on my rounding mountain. So I'm going to circle that there up on a rounding mountain. And I know it's on the left side here that I stay the same. So my circled number becomes the same number. And everything else becomes a 0 after it. But I can't forget the numbers before it. Because I'm not trying to say 624,415 is approximately 4,000. That doesn't make sense at all. Really, I'm trying to say is 624,415 is close to or about or approximately 624,000. So I fill that in my blank right here. And this statement is true here. 624,415 is close to or about or approximately 624,000 on here. Let's try another one on here. This time we'll take the number and we'll actually round to the nearest 10,000. So I have my 1s, my 10s, my 100s, my 1000s, and now my 10,000s. I'm going to circle that 2 there because I'm going to round to the nearest 10,000. And I'm going to point my arrow to the number to the right of it, to my smaller place value, and to my thousands there. So that 4 I have to look up above, and I see that 4 lands right onto that rounding mountain up on top, and I'm going to keep the same. So that 2 stays the same here. Alright, so that 2, I have to erase my lines down below. That 2 stays the same. Everything else after it becomes a 0. And I can't forget my numbers in front. I'm going to fill it in my blank. And I'm going to say my statement here. 624,415 is about, or approximately, or close to 620,000. Let's see if we can do one more 100,000s place value. So here I'm going to go to my 100,000s. So I have my ones, my tens, my hundreds, my thousands, my 10,000s, and my 100,000s. I'm going to circle that 6 there. I'm going to erase those little lines up above so you can actually see it without any distractions. And I draw my arrow to my 2. That 2 falls on here on the rounding mountain on the stay the same side. So what happens there? Well, my 6 actually stays the same. Becomes a 6. Everything else after it becomes a 0. And look how I write them right underneath the place value there, so I don't miss any place values or any digits that are in there. And then I simply rewrite it. So here, for rounding to the nearest 100,000s, I can say 624,415 is close to, is about, or is approximately 600,000. Now, a bunch of you are asking, what happens when my number that I'm pointing to falls on the other side of the rounding mountain? Well, in this case, we're actually going to add 1 to that circled number there. So what we're trying to figure out is really, is this number closer to another one, higher number or a lower number here? So let's say we're going to round to the nearest thousands. So I'm going to take my ones, my tens, my hundreds, and my thousands. I'm going to circle that 6 there, and I'm going to point to my 7, which is my hundreds. That 7 now is going to tell me, am I going to be closer to 6,000 or 7,000? So I see the 7 up here, and I can slide on down that side there, and I can see that I have to add 1 to that circled number there. Well, that 7, or excuse me, that 6 here actually starts to become a 7 if I add 1 to it, because really what we're saying is 956,745 is closer to 957,000. So we're seeing that that 6,745 is really closer to 7,000 there. So I put my 7 in there. I change my 0 since we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, and everything before it stays the same. I rewrite it there, and I can say that 956,745 is about, close to, or approximately 957,000 in here. So that's our rounding mountain, what we need to do when we come across a number that needs to be rounded. And we're seeing really, is it closer to, is it farther away, is it about, is it approximately? We're trying to determine what's it closest to at this point.